All right. Welcome to the 2021 SU Election Forum hosted by the International Students Association. Before we begin, the ISA would like to acknowledge that our university is on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. I will be this afternoon's moderator, Safwan, the ISA's VP Student Life. I will now review the conduct of this program as indicated by Bylaw 2200, Section 18. Individual races will be referred to by their first name. For simplicity, referendums and plebiscites will also be referred to as candidates. No objects shall be thrown, no heckling shall occur, no campaign material shall be distributed during the forum. Due to the nature of this forum, all questions will be asked from the moderator. No candidate or volunteer representing their campaign shall interfere, attempt to stop, limit, or otherwise dissuade the moderator from asking a question. This forum will not exceed 2.5 hours. Out of respect for other candidates, I will ask that your videos and mic are turned off until called upon by the moderator. Each candidate will be afforded a 3-minute maximum opening speech at the beginning of their turn. The speaking order will be introduced as follows. Golden Bears and Pandas Legacy Fund referendum, the Gateway plebiscite, UPass referendum, Oasis membership fee, president candidate, vice president candidates, VP external candidates, VP OPS5 candidates, VP Student Life candidates, and the Board of Governor representative candidates. I will now ask the Golden Bears and Pandas Legacy Fund to turn on their camera, and you have 5 minutes for your speech.
Thank you so much. Hello, I'm Samantha Chapman, and I'm representing the Legacy Fund referendum campaign. For some quick background, the fund in question is a fee of $4.64, which is applied to tuition each semester. It then works to strengthen the community through providing support to our varsity teams, work experience to kinesiology and nutrition students, and job opportunities to the general student body. Once collected, interested parties must provide a thorough report outlining how they plan to use their portion of the fund. That report must then be approved by a board of students. All parties which withdraw a portion of the fund must also match it, doubling the impact of the Legacy Fund as a whole. I want to start by explaining the difference of the Legacy Fund and the Athletics and Recreation fee, which is tied to your tuition. The Athletics and Recreation fee is a facility usage fee that is entirely separate from our initiative. It pays for students to have access to the pool, the climbing wall, and other facilities like this. It does not pay for the student experience. The Legacy Fund, on the other hand, creates jobs, community initiatives, and provides entertainment. International recognition of our institution is highly reliant on both the branding and results which are achieved via our varsity teams. A large number of student athletes at the U of A are international students, and this unique opportunity allows them to lessen the hefty load of an international tuition fee. Furthermore, we have staggering international student employment with our game day staff and operations job placements. Taking these jobs as an international student diminishes your need for a long commute. Instead, that is just a hop on the LRT or a short walk over to the Claire Drake Arena. Lessening the weight of tuition of international students, both through scholarship and job opportunities, are core features of the fund, which benefit and diversify our community as a whole. Also, the international student population at the varsity events is always super high. You are all a community which has been super supportive of varsity in the past. For 3 consecutive years predating the pandemic, a portion of the Legacy Fund was used to host international student nights. In these, first-year international students were invited to a hockey or football game. For background, students who came to these nights were given a quick hockey or football 101, if you will, to provide them with necessary information which would prepare them for what they are about to see. The students in attendance also received t-shirts, pom-poms, noisemakers, and foods, all in an effort to introduce them to varsity athletics and ensure that they are welcomed into our U of A family by our varsity teams. The fund is unique in that it spans such a wide variety of student groups within our vibrant campus network, benefiting everyone engaging in our inclusive campus. For international students in particular, creating job opportunities for you is a central component of the Legacy Fund. Also, ensuring that international students are welcomed onto campus and are immersed in our green and gold family. Voting yes for the Legacy Fund is a vote for inclusion. It is a fee which gives more than it takes, and it helps to tie our community together. A vote for the Legacy Fund is a vote for opportunity, job creation, and to unite in green and gold. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Now we will move forward to our next piece. It's from Gateway. You may start. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Lahatch, and I'm a fifth-year double major in history and political science here at the U of A, and this year's editor-in-chief at the Gateway. International students have a very unique experience of campus, and even more unique in this difficult year. And what better way to document those stories and push for change than to have international students write themselves about that very experience? The Gateway did just that this year. We established a standing guest column with the International Student Association to ensure that international student voices were represented, heard, and shared. We provided training sessions to guest column writers that were informed by industry standard materials that professional media rely upon. And this commitment by the Gateway allowed anyone to submit a column through the ISA. This opportunity started in the fall of this year, and we look forward to not only continuing it, but expanding it even further in the next 5-year mandate. Next year and in the years to come, we will offer more support and training to guest column writers based off of our experience this year, and help organizations like the ISA, Aboriginal Student Council, the Black Students Association, The Landing, and others on this campus to use this platform even better. Not only does the Gateway offer this opportunity to hear your voices, but we continually report on issues international students face and all University of Alberta students experience. Our news coverage gives you the proceedings of General Faculty's Council and the Board of Governors and their associated subcommittees, where decisions are made resulting in international student tuition, meal plan rates, and the student experience and quality of education. We go to these meetings so that you don't have to. You can rest assured that the quality information that we provide in the Gateway will be communicated in a timely manner so that you as students always know what's going on at your institution. We highlight campus perspectives by offering a platform for students no matter what faculty or program they are a part of, and receive quality training so that they can share their views in a respectful and professional manner. This year, we expanded our outreach efforts to ensure that every faculty received information about how to get involved in the Gateway. We ran 2 major readership surveys to get real-time feedback from students, ran multiple focus group sessions, and consultations with student groups and student leaders on campus to make sure that we are hearing from students and fulfilling our mandate to serve them. And this is consultation that will continue. It will not just stop this year. This year, we've covered stories on all the major issues on campus, including academic restructuring, the impacts of COVID-19, and online learning, and even the International Students Association internal elections. We've published several news articles over the past few months about the ISA's anonymous reporting form, the vote at Students' Council to make the ISA an official student representative association, history in the making, and the unique mental health struggles that international students have been dealing with, often attending class in the middle of night. With all of that being said, the Gateway truly plays an integral role here at the University of Alberta. And we do this for $3.54 per semester for full-time students in fall and winter, and 54 cents per spring and summer semesters. And those fees increase with inflation. For those low amounts, you get access to the most affordable subscription to quality and award-winning journalism you will ever have. For that price of a chocolate bar or a coffee, you get access to 1,000+ online articles, 8 monthly magazines, and multimedia projects. This year, students will have the opportunity to continue that 110-year legacy of student journalism at the Gateway. On March 3rd and 4th, vote yes to continue the Gateway's legacy of enabling campus perspectives and quality reporting on issues facing both international students and the greater U of A campus by renewing our DFU. You can check out votegateway.ca for more information, or see our work and all the changes we've made yourself at gtwy.ca. The University of Alberta and ISA Students Association, this is your campus, your voice, and your gateway. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have a representative from the Gateway, from the UPass referendum, excuse me. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Staff One. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alana. I'm the current SU Vice President, Operations and Finance, and today I'm here to discuss the UPass. So the UPass is your transit pass that gives you universal and unlimited access across 7 cities in the Edmonton region, including the airport. It's paid through by your school fees once per semester, meaning that you can use any bus or train around the whole Edmonton region as many times as you want, anywhere that you want, and pay no extra fees. I've had the pleasure of speaking with the members of the International Students Association Board about the UPass, and it was very good for our team to hear about the unique questions that international students have. While I don't pretend to know all of your thoughts on the UPass, I hope that we can take some time right now to address the questions that have been expressed. So let's start with a topic that is most top of mind, which is cost. It's widely known that international students face the highest costs on our campus. For this reason, you may think that paying $180 per semester for your UPass is unfavorable and unhelpful. To be honest, I completely respect your concerns, and I think that the student leaders that you see here today should be held accountable for addressing international student fees far beyond $180. But I strongly believe that the UPass is a valuable service that is well worth the cost. It saves students hundreds of dollars per semester compared to monthly fare products, which are the next cheapest option. You save the most money if you live outside of Edmonton, say in St. Albert or Spruce Grove, saving up to $608 a semester. But even if you live in Edmonton, you can save $112 per semester on monthly fare products if you're under the age of 25, and $220 if you're older. These are discounts of 38% and 55%. And that's saving on Edmonton transit systems alone. Remember that you can travel all over the region without paying extra, including travel to the airport, saving you lots of money on taxis, shuttles, and parking. This is why, even though the fee itself may seem high, it will actually save you a lot of money. So let's move on to a different concern that we've heard from international students. What if you're taking all of your classes remotely, even from outside of Canada? I can answer this question very simply. If all of your classes are completely online, you personally will not have to pay the UPass fee, even if other students with in-person classes are paying it. Right now, no student has a UPass because of COVID, but even if the UPass program comes back, students who are taking only online classes will not be assessed the fee. This is written into the contract between the SU, GSA, university, and transit authorities, so no worries there. Okay, now shifting gears to talk about another question we've heard. Why is the UPass mandatory, and what other options are available if the UPass is voted down? Every UPass program across the country involves a mandatory fee. This philosophy of universal contribution for universal access is something that we see in many of the fees that we pay. The goal for the UPass program, though, is to keep the fee as low as possible so that all students have equal access to our campus and our region, regardless of age, location, or ability to pay. This universality enables the kind of cost savings that we talked about earlier. During the initial stages of the pandemic, student institutions across the city tried everything they could to have an optional UPass program implemented, but to no avail. Transit authorities and the municipalities have refused to consider an opt-in or opt-out UPass model, even during these most extenuating circumstances. If the UPass is voted down at referendum, an optional UPass will not be available in the future. So students are left with 2 options: to have the discounted transit prices offered by the UPass, or to pay full cost for transit. We've seen during the pandemic that any low-cost alternatives to the UPass that Edmonton Transit Service has agreed to are temporary, inconvenient, and frankly unreliable. They're not equally accessible to all students, especially international students, many of whom were excluded from the pandemic alternatives. The UPass guarantees that international students won't be left behind again. It guarantees that for the next 4 years, you will not face any price increases in transit costs since there is a 4-year price freeze on the UPass fee. You do not need any special government documentation. If you are a student attending the University of Alberta, you get the same UPass as everybody else. To close, let's talk about one more question. What about those international students living close to campus? When many people think of the UPass, they tend to focus on using it to get from school to home, so you might not think that this applies to you, but your UPass can take you so much farther. Your life is about more than school, and so is your UPass. It's important to remember that this is a 4-year program, and for the first time ever, the price won't increase for the whole time. So think about your plans for the next 4 years when voting, including the possibility that you could move. You could rely on transit to get to your practicum, a job, to get home, to go exploring, to pick up groceries, or just to have fun. When you vote on March 3rd and 4th, I hope that you'll consider how wonderful it is to have a cost-effective way to get together wherever we need to go. So thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out at yesforupass.com. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Now on to the next representative. We have a representative from Oasis to speak about the Faculty Association membership fee. Go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Hello everybody, my name is Chris and I'm here as a volunteer for the Oasis FANF. Today I want to go through what the Oasis FANF is, what Oasis does on campus, and why everybody should support it. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank our wonderful hosts, the ISA, for inviting us here to talk about the Oasis FANF. The single largest population of international students on campus is found in the Faculty of Arts, and so this is important. The Organization for Art Students and Interdisciplinary Studies, or Oasis, is the student-led faculty association for over 6,000 arts undergraduates. Oasis runs events and does advocacy and oftentimes works in conjunction with the ISA and the Students' Union to build a united student movement here at the university. I'm here today because a question for art students on the SU executive election ballot will be whether art students support paying a $3 a semester fee over 3 years, beginning collection in September 2021. My goal today is to give all the art students in attendance the confidence that they should vote yes to this small fee. Because Oasis exists as a combination to two things. Oasis is at the same time a service organization and a representative organization that fights for students. As a service organization, Oasis spends its money providing grants to be applied for by all art students and arts organizations. Oasis gives out thousands of dollars in grants, and as a former VP Finance of Oasis, I've seen all the grant applications, and I know that the money that Oasis gives to students is transformative. School is expensive, particularly for international students who pay ridiculous amounts of money and need grants to be able to do things. Oasis also grants thousands to organizations within the Faculty of Arts, where they exist as dedicated and reliable sources of funding to our 14 department associations, each of which represent a unique community. These are organizations like the Music Students Associations, but it's also the KGK, which is the Department Association for East Asian Studies. And the money that Oasis provides lets the DAs run their programming and create community on campus, something that's specifically important right now during COVID, where so many students need community. And so Oasis has already allocated and earmarked half of the funds that we might get from the FANF to be allocated to grants, meaning that a minimum of $18,000 would go right to department associations, art clubs, and art students. And Oasis doesn't have much revenue outside of the FANF, so if this vote fails, Oasis simply won't have the money to be able to support department associations on campus in the way that we do right now. And so voting yes for the FANF is how we keep that support flowing. Additionally, Oasis has allocated 20% of its funds to events and programming, where they provide value by hosting research conferences that showcase the works that art students do in translation and economics, and we deconstruct the idea that research is done exclusively in test tubes and labs. And the remainder of the money is allocated to the other things that Oasis does to return that money to students. That looks like free printing that we provide to all art students, the programming that's run, and the ways that we advertise events and elections. Particularly, people seem to love free printing because it's just really easy to access and use. But all of these events and services rely on money that we can realistically only get if the FANF passes, and without it, Oasis as we know it and the services that we know it are under threat. So in the last little bit of my speech, I want to talk about how Oasis fights for students and the link between being sustainably funded and how that helps Oasis advocate to make life better for art students. At first glance, it looks like advocacy doesn't cost any money, but the one thing that I've been learned is the credit that people give to your arguments is directly linked to how established they see you as being. When the ISA runs huge-scale events and is able to reach thousands of students, it means that when Chanpreet says what international students need, the university listens. And the reach we have lets more students come to us with concerns because they met us through a service. That means that they're not only in better contact with us because they applied for a grant or because they met us through one of our other services, but that the people that we talk to know that we're in contact with students when they bring student concerns forward, right? Particularly important when we get to say things like we've heard so many stories from international students about the struggles with online learning and how online learning just isn't working for many international students right now. And that's just redoubled by the fact that we have such a consistent presence in our students because of the money we get from the FANF. As well, Oasis was able to work closely with the ISA and Chanpreet, pushing the motions on online learning first through the Council on Student Affairs, and then recently through General Faculty's Council again. And the reason why I talk about advocacy here is that although advocacy doesn't cost money, being involved and present in the lives of art students is a prerequisite for advocacy, and that does cost money. If you vote yes for the Oasis FANF, Oasis can continue to expand its reach and influence, not only meaning that they can connect and platform more students, but also when you speak out that you're listened to by Oasis. Today, I've made a case for a $3 a semester fee because Oasis does incredible work for art students. The FANF has to pass so that the work that we do for our advocacy can continue and to continue to be as effective as it is. The FANF has to pass for Oasis to be able to grant thousands of dollars to our department associations and to art students. And finally, the Oasis FANF has to pass so that we can continue to provide the services and programming that we know students like you rely on. I wish I could take questions from folks, but that time is being reserved for candidates, so that's all good. If you follow the Oasis Yes side on Facebook and Instagram, you can ask your questions there, and I'll be going live on Friday with the campaign manager for the Yes side, Ana Oliveira, and we'll answer questions there too. For art students in the audience, on March 3rd and 4th, vote yes for the Oasis FANF, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will now move forward to our presidential candidate. Rowan, you have 3 minutes. I repeat, 3 minutes. You may begin.
Well, I just want to start off by thanking the ISA and Safwan for hosting this forum. It's always been a pleasure to work with the ISA and to work with Chanpreet this year. And, you know, I really understand the unique and different struggles that international students go through, from the endless bureaucracy of dealing with the immigration system to extreme and unfair fees, to the difficulty of adjusting to a new culture and a new society at the same time as the struggle of adjusting to university. I know that your experience is different and in many ways harder than what most domestic students go through. So that's one of the reasons that I kept the needs of international students at front of mind when working on my platform. And there's two main parts of my platform I want to talk about today that will benefit international students. So first of all, this year, Chanpreet and I worked together to develop a proposal for how to streamline immigration for international students. We know that a lot of international students want to stay in Canada after they graduate. They've found good networks here, perhaps they have good jobs lined up, and this is somewhere they'd want to stay. But dealing with the endless bureaucracy and administrative hassle of Citizenship and Immigration Canada sometimes puts that dream out of reach for them. In other provinces, there's what's called a study to stay program. And that means that at the end of your international student degree, you get a visa nomination from your province that puts you in the express lane to get a permanent residency in Canada. This already exists in Ontario, Manitoba, and all of the maritime provinces. And there's no good reason why we shouldn't have that here in Alberta too. I think that this is achievable to accomplish because this is a win for everybody. Alberta gets skilled international workers who will contribute a lot to our community, and international students get access to the jobs and opportunities of our province. That will be one of my main advocacy priorities to the provincial government if I'm elected president. I also understand that international students face different and disproportionate academic pressures from domestic students when your scholarships and even your visas can depend on your academic status. That's one of the reasons I'm proposing an opt-in pass-fail system like exists at 3 of the top 5 universities in Canada. Under this proposal, you'd be able to choose a limited number of your courses in your degree to take as a pass-fail course. So it wouldn't affect your GPA, but you would get a credit. This would allow students to explore courses outside their comfort zone without worrying that it would tank your GPA. But it also means that in a family crisis or a mental health crisis, you're able to take a pass-fail course and lighten that load that can force some students into mental health crisis. University isn't supposed to be easy, and I don't think any of us want that. But it also shouldn't be cruel. It should be flexible and it should support people in crisis. And that's the kind of campus that I want to help build as president. This community has given me a lot, and this year is one of my last opportunities to give back, both to the domestic and international students who've given so much to me. That's why I want the chance to serve this year.
Apologies for that. I will now invite our Vice President Academics candidate, Abner. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Abner. I'm a fifth-year BSc in Kinesiology student, and I'm running to be your next Students' Union Vice President Academic. I'd like to first and foremost thank the ISA and USAF1 for hosting this forum and giving us candidates an opportunity to talk about international students and their concerns. What I'd like to talk to you about today are 3 areas which I believe are fundamental to improving the international student experience here at the U of A: online learning, collaboration between the Students' Union and the ISA, and work-integrated learning opportunities. These have been trying times for us all, and even more so on international students. You've had to deal with waking up at absurd hours for classes and labs, having participation grades for classes that you can't even attend, and all this while dealing with a spotty internet connection. It's not right, it's not fair, and it's negatively impacting the mental health of so many students at a time where mental health should be at the forefront. Know that I will continue to work collaboratively with the ISA to fight on these issues so international students and all can experience what they paid for when they wanted to attend the U of A and continue to have access to mental health services that they need. This year, I had the privilege of being on the Student Council and voting in favor of the ISA becoming a student representative association so that international students can have stronger representation at this university. You all bring a diverse and much needed perspective to the decision-making table, and that needs to not just be acknowledged, but be met with action. I will be deliberate in setting a positive relationship with the ISA and continue to work with them to ensure that international student concerns are being heard and we're creating a culture of inclusivity, and continue to consult with them so that they are supported and can be sustainable going into the future. You as international students come from near and far to get a world-class educational experience, and part of that experience is access to experiential and work-integrated learning opportunities. I've already been in talks with the Career Center here at the university, and my hope is working in collaboration with the next VP External and the ISA, we can expand Campus Bridge, which is a service currently offered to students to find job postings, attend resume and interview workshops, and so much more, to potentially include a diverse array of work-integrated learning opportunities for all of our students. This creates an opportunity to allow international students to make work connections and continue to be a part of our community and work here after they graduate. Now, I acknowledge that expanding the number of work-integrated learning opportunities that international students means that if they aren't able to get the work permits, they need to utilize the service. And although that just talking about work permits doesn't fall under the VP academic portfolio, I'll be working with the next VP External to make sure that we're advocating at provincial and federal levels so that students can get the documentation they need to capitalize on the opportunities I hope to create. I hope these ideas I have you looking forward to a better future for international students. And if anything I said has gotten you excited, then on March 4th, 3rd and 4th, vote Abner for VP Academic. Thanks.
Thank you. We will now invite our VP External candidate, Christian. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Hi, and thank you to SAF1 and the ISA team for organizing this forum. My name is Christian Fotang, and I'm running to be your next UASU Vice President External. International students contribute over billions of dollars into our Canadian economy and provide over hundreds of thousands of jobs. And they bring an array of diverse viewpoints and perspectives to the cultural tapestry of our campus community. Our federal government and provincial government are always giving a lot of flamboyant talk about wanting to increase Canada's standing as a place for recruiting more international students. But it's time that this rhetoric be put into action. This means decreasing the barriers that hinder international student success. These barriers include, but aren't limited to, the difficult transition period that many international students experience, the lengthy application process for study permits and visa applications, and pushing for the university and provincial government to do more about stopping the exorbitant rate at which international students' tuition fees are increasing, and also pushing for the federal government to increase the number of hours per week which international students are able to work for during the fall and winter semester. But it's also looking to how our Students' Union can lend a hand in supporting international students, whether it be through the Student Involvement Endowment Fund to help provide more scholarships and awards for international students, as well as empowering our newly created Student Representative Association, the International Students Association, which I was very proud to lend a hand in and a vote in creating ISA, becoming an SRA. I also plan on continuing to work hand in hand with ISA's President and Vice President External to implement all the changes I listed above. I will involve ISA in all the meetings and conversations relevant to international students' issues and work with them and other international student leaders across Canada to demand that CASA, the Canadian Alliance of Students Association, create a working group whose mandate would be to develop a strategic plan on advocating for the issues pertaining to international students and for that to contribute to CASA's overall advocacy priorities. So this March 3rd and 4th, for better and stronger advocacy for international students, vote POTAG. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to our VP Operations and Finance candidates. I will like to invite Emily first. You have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you to the ISA and thank you to you, Safwan, for holding this forum. I'm very grateful for this opportunity and I'm excited to be here. So international students make up over 20% of the students on campus. I think we can all agree that this is a pretty significant number. But regardless of the significant population of international students, there is still a lack of support when it comes to international students. International students face and continue to face a number of challenges, such as a language barrier and adjusting to a new culture. I remember when I immigrated to Canada and started school here, I faced a language barrier that made me feel isolated. I also believe that there's a lack of mental health and wellness supports for international students, especially now with classes being online. International students deserve to be supported, heard, and represented on our campus. If elected, I will support the international students in 3 ways. 1, by getting a permanent subspace for international students. This space will not only be used by the ISA Council, but it'll also be used as a place for international students to meet and to foster community. I think this past year has shown us how important community and relationships can really be, and I want to foster that when campus reopens. 2, I want to work with the student union services, such as the Peer Support Center and InfoLink, to work towards having services available in multiple languages. Students shouldn't have any barriers accessing our services. And additionally, I will work towards having resources, such as a student handbook translated to multiple languages. And 3rd, I will work to provide additional support to international students through Empower Me, a mental health and wellness service offered by the SU. Empower Me is multilingual and is offered in 22 countries outside of Canada, which means that international students and students who speak various languages have full access to this program if in need of support. Once again, thank you to the ISA for holding this forum. You can find my full platform at emilykamadi.com, and I hope to have your support March 3rd and 4th.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to our next VP Operations and Finance candidate, Julia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and Safwan for moderating this forum and the ISA for having this forum. I know that many students are not currently here in Edmonton and maybe somewhere completely on the other side of the globe. With the difficulties of having classes in an online environment, it is even more difficult to create and make connections with fellow students. Finding communities that you belong in and feel connected to can feel extremely difficult and may even feel impossible in this environment. Being part of a community with individuals who are like-minded is important in order to maintain our mental health during a challenging part of our lives. This is why there are over 450 student groups across campus, the ISA being one of the largest of them. Student groups are the absolute heart of the campus community, whether the commonality is your ethnicity, a shared interest, or the fact that you are an international student. Student groups are what provides a sense of community and connection on campus. I personally met some of my closest friends on campus through a student group and in a non-academic setting. But even with the 450 student groups on campus, it may pose as another challenge to feel connected with any of them and would like to start your own community with a common interest. This is why I want to create a student group handbook, a one-stop resource that is accessible and readily available for all students, no matter the time or place. Whether it be how to get a grant, how to register events, or how to even apply to become a student group. This resource will have it all. I want students to be able to create these spaces for themselves and further enrich our campus community. I want students to create the communities in university that they will thrive in. I am Joy Veloso, and on March 3rd and 4th, vote for me for ease of access to services and resources to empower your university experience. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move forward to our VP Student Life candidates. Talia, Daniela, you can go first. And you have 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. So, year and year again, international students are now made a priority in the student life portfolio. Do you see yourself represented when you look at the candidates? I acknowledge that the SU has largely failed international students. It has failed international students to voice their concerns adequately and timely. Your vote has been treated as a token. Year after year, promises are made by candidates that have no track record in fighting for you. But why should you vote for me? Vote for me because it's time the lived experiences of international students are represented in the student life portfolio. Vote for me because my promises are more than words. They are more than meetings. They are more than statements. My promises are actions, actions I took when no one else chose to act. Vote for me because just last December, within one day, ISA President Champreet and I had a plan in action to bring forward to the GFC, the highest academic council at the university, to addressing inequalities international students were facing on the online learning environment and continue to experience. Vote for me because I knew international students were eating frozen food for over a week during the winter break, and I teamed up with the ISA and drove countless hours to ensure these students had proper food. Vote for me because I'm actively involved in the international student community as an international senior peer mentor to multiple international students and have fought for more inclusive food options for international students in residence. Vote Daniela for mental health resources that acknowledge your lived experiences. I will work with the ISA and prospective student groups to create comprehensive and free orientations to better help international students adjust to Canada and campus life. To address student isolation with emphasis on international student experiences who are far from home and provide them the supports they need. To promote diversity in the meal plans to help students feel more at home. So on March 3rd and 4th, vote Daniela if you are ready to be represented by a candidate that not only cares, but understands the experiences of international students. Thank you.
Thank you. I do apologize for the earlier mistake. Candidate Talia, you are free to go. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
2 years ago, I became a student representative because I wanted to fight for students that I believed were underserved by the SU. Since then, I have worked hard to prioritize international students in my advocacy and bring a strong relationship with the ISA. From ensuring that there was international student representation on the Sustainability Committee to speaking up for international students consistently at GFC and offering my support to the ISA in their work to become an SRA, among other things, I've already shown that as a student representative, I don't make international students an afterthought, but a priority. That being said, it is no secret that student leaders often fail to show up for international students. And while we have made big steps in the right direction this year, I know that we must all improve our advocacy. That's a big reason why I'm running for VPSL, because I want to build on the relationships I have made and work I have done while learning from my mistakes so that I can address the issues that matter most to you as an international student. Simply put, I am running because I know that while I may not be an international student, I am the person that is going to fight for international students the way they deserve to be fought for. Why? Because I know that there are many things that unite international and domestic students, but there are also distinct differences that make your life as an international student more challenging. And as your VPSL, I will work tirelessly to not only help you survive these struggles, but to thrive despite them. To help you thrive, we must focus on strengthening mental health supports by making them culturally inclusive and sensitive, which includes recruiting volunteers who speak diverse languages and come from diverse cultural and spiritual backgrounds, along with providing cultural sensitivity training. And because I recognize that in some cultures, there is a stigma against mental health, we must work with experts to develop a plan to counter this stigma. COVID has also limited international students' abilities to access supports. By creating a mental health awareness campaign to promote Empower Me, we can connect international students with comprehensive mental health supports in over 22 countries around the world. To help you thrive, we must also work to create a community for international students. I will do this by working with the ISA and other groups on campus to create cultural events for holidays like Chinese New Year, and by working harder to connect international students with this land and its people through events such as Aboriginal Awareness Week. Additionally, I have plans to create more religious spaces across campus, which is particularly important for Muslim students. Finally, international students are impacted by sexual assault just like anyone, but face an additional barrier to accessing supports. As your VPSL, I will create a guide specifically for international students and translate it into various languages. I know that I can't solve every issue affecting you, but I can promise you this: as your VPSL, I will build solidarity between international and domestic students on the issues that unite us while recognizing your unique challenges, so that I can stand with you to fight for the university experience that you deserve, even in these uncertain times. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I will now invite our Board of Governors representative candidate, Dave. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm excited to be back and running to represent you again. This last year has been a journey of learning for me, where I've had successes and failures with international students. Firstly, Gurbani and Champreet approached me to support their Student Representative Association application to Students' Council. And my involvement marked the beginning in a long, difficult process, but through many conversations and my defending ISA's intentions, ISA achieved their goal. Next came a failure. Champreet and I approached the Board Learning Research and Student Experience Committee, and we were looking for international student representation, and we were denied on the grounds that international students need to funnel their concerns to the Students' Union, whose president sits on the board, and that offering one seat to an internal stakeholder, not other internal stakeholders, was unfair. And now we see that we are on the crest of positive change, where university administration has responded meaningfully to remote learning concerns by striking a task force to find solutions. I was part of that advocacy to administration at General Faculties Council. I'm glad to have been a part of all of these projects, and I want to continue working with you. International students pay over $20,000 more per year on average than the domestic student for tuition. And this is because the provincial government restricts universities from subsidizing international student tuition with provincial funding. And this is because the government believes that institutions need to incentivize domestic students over international students. What they fail to see is that you, international students, according to 2018 statistics, had a 50% likelihood of applying for permanent residency and working in Canada after graduation. With our high elderly population and low birth rates, Alberta needs you if we want to be a province that works well. And our government refusing to acknowledge your value by refusing to subsidize your tuition is disrespectful and manipulative. We need to build a case around your value as people able to contribute to the society. And I will do this by advocating that the board include international student employment rates after graduation in their conversations with the government about performance-based funding metrics. I will also advocate that the Office of Advancement focus on communicating your value to external community donors so that you get bursaries that you don't have to compete with domestic students for. Lastly, Champreet and I spoke last week, and he raised the fact that many students are in crisis mode and you need more bursaries from the financial aid that came off your tuition increases. And I will advocate for this at the March 12th vote and at following meetings. I'm Dave Conrad, and I'm here for students, which means I'm here for you when you feel like an outsider or that you're being taken advantage of at this institution. More details can be found at daveconrad.com. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. We will now proceed to the question period, and I will invite our presidential candidate first. Rowan, you may turn on your camera, and how it will proceed is that I will ask several questions and you have 1 minute to answer. For the first question, I apologize. Tell us about one challenge that you think international students face when they come to U of A, and what will you do from your position to resolve it?
Well, I don't want to sound like a broken record and keep going back to the same thing, but I think that this is a really good point that needs to be addressed. We know that international students face much worse academic stress than typical domestic students because often the scholarships that they depend on to pay for their education and even their immigration status in Canada are dependent on maintaining a certain GPA or at least maintaining academic good standing. And this means that if you have a mental health crisis or you have a death in the family that requires you to travel home or something like that, then any impact that has on your grades can be really, really harmful to your status in Canada and the access to money to pay for your education. Bringing in an opt-in pass-fail policy would transform this by making sure that students in crisis could have the opportunity to use some of their limited pass-fail courses so that they could have a little bit of that academic burden lifted while they dealt with the problems in their life that they needed to deal with. Obviously, there's many more points in my platform, which you can find at voterowan.ca, but I think that's the best one.
Thank you. So for the next question, after the whole SU Students Council and ISA Council roll on the SRA, there is a significant damage and distrust among the international students community and the SU relationship. How do you want to improve it?
Well, the best way to have a good relationship with anyone is to work together as partners with trust on issues that we share and can do something about. So my main priority would be working with the ISA executive team, identifying your advocacy priorities for the year, figuring out where your priorities and our priorities match, and developing a plan of action to work together on them. This has been pretty effective, and I think the value of this strategy has already been demonstrated with the conversations about online learning at GFC, but I don't think we need to limit this strategy to online learning and stop using it now. And if we work together and get wins together, then that builds trust and that builds mutual respect. But there are other things that we can help the ISA with. One of the major things that I would point out is helping the ISA get access to office space on campus. Having that access to an in-person community will be very valuable once we're all back on campus after COVID. So other smaller projects like that to demonstrate good faith and work together with the ISA are projects I'd undertake too.
Thank you. For the next question, how do you plan to achieve fee fairness?
Well, that's a great question, which I particularly love because there is a page in my platform called Fee Fairness. So obviously all of our fees are too high, but we do need to prioritize which ones are the worst. And I believe the worst fees we pay are the ones that we literally don't get anything for, that there is no service provided in exchange for that fee. And two fees that I point out in particular in my platform are the fact that the student academic support fee is charged at 70% to students on practicum, and that the installment fee is charged if you pay your tuition in two separate installments, one in September and one in January. These fees are both profoundly unfair because less than half of the student academic support fee services are actually available if you're on a practicum term, so you shouldn't be paying for 70% of them. And the installment fee is unfair because students who are on loans or who have to work constantly to pay their tuition actually cannot pay in a single installment. So getting those fees abolished and reduced, I think, is the best way we can fight for fee fairness.
Thank you. The next question we have is that there was a huge communications gap this year between the ISA, the SU, and GSA. What would you do to resolve this?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying that given that this was the first year that we were working with the ISA in this way, that it was a learning experience, right? We have to develop the processes, and I think we've learned a lot of lessons from that. So I think that one of the things that helps is just having regular check-in meetings. Ideally, I'd like that to be with myself, the president of the GSA, depending, of course, on whether they're willing to participate in that, and the ISA president. And doing that in a little more structured way is important. So informal check-ins are great, but we also do need to have formal action items that people are accountable to. So making sure that we set up that constant, formal, and structured communication pathway will be quite important. But also to communicate with international students more broadly, I'm quite open to engaging with the ISA's councils and with the ISA's executives and with groups of international students that the ISA thinks that we should present to or have dinner with or whatever other methods they want. I'm open to taking suggestions for how we can communicate better, as well as bringing my own ideas.
Thank you. For the next question. Last year, the SU execs goals document had the word international only once on the 4th page. Is this a lot on what the priorities are for the SU? Why does it happen like that? Why are international students considered important during elections and immediately after elections all gone? All they get is like a single mentioning at the very end of execs' annual goals.
Well, I will say that looking at a word count in a document is not necessarily an accurate way of assessing how important something is to someone. There is a more nuanced way of looking at what the meaning of the document is. And there are some issues that do not only affect international students, but disproportionately affect international students. And so working on them is still of a significant benefit. Like fair grading policies as a significant example of that. But, I will not lie, in the past, it is true that international students have not had the level of access and prioritization in the Students' Union that they needed to. And part of that has been because the exec is almost always composed of domestic students, and international students are not represented in the process. So having the ISA existing in its current form to represent international students, and with the strong links of communication that we talked about in the previous question, I think that will enable us to make sure that international student concerns are centered a lot more in the priority development process.
One more question that we have is, so the SU is restructuring its governance structure. A task force was created without an ISA's representative, with international students being 15% of SU membership and not having a say in the Students' Union government's restructuring. Why did this happen in the first place?
Well, I have not been part of the task force on restructuring. Unfortunately, that's just been outside of my portfolio this year, as I've been dealing primarily with external issues. So, if you're asking about the exact process of how members were chosen and how that happened, then unfortunately, I'm not really the best person to answer that. You would have to talk to any of the members that are on the current task force. But I can say that the voice of international students in any governance restructuring that we do have is very important, and that there needs to be some kind of robust consultation and discussion process to ensure their concerns are heard. Now, next year, we're not entirely sure what the next steps will look like for governance restructuring. We're not sure whether we'll strike another committee. We're not sure exactly how this will work. So it's difficult to give a specific answer, except to say that we need to make sure that the international student voice is represented very strongly, because as you point out, not only is it 15% of our student population, but it's a 15% that faces different and unique challenges.
Thank you so much. Now, to end this, you will have 30 seconds to promote your campaign to the international students.
Well, I'd just like to finish off again by saying thank you to you, Safwan, and to the ISA for hosting this forum. It has been a pleasure to work together this year, and I'm sure it'll be a pleasure to work again next year if I'm lucky enough to be elected president. I certainly hope I've been able to earn your vote by putting together a platform that prioritizes the needs of international students, that focuses on addressing your problems at their root cause and not just throwing on band-aid solutions. And it would be my pleasure to work with all of you next year and to help give back to this campus that has given so much to me. So you can learn more about my platform at voterowan.ca.
Awesome, thank you. I will now invite our VP academic candidate, Abner. For your first question, tell us about one challenge that you think international students face when they come to U of A, and what will you do from your position to resolve it? You have 1 minute.
Perfect, thanks, Safwan. Yeah, so in my platform, I talk specifically about the Charter of Student Rights and Responsibilities. And in particular, the Charter, it outlines all the different rights and responsibilities students have in order to be protected when they attend the University of Alberta. There's a unique challenge that international students face when they come here, not being new to the community and not having a complete understanding of what the culture is like, how they should be, if they're being treated fairly. And in particularly, what I want to address is first, making sure that they understand what those rights are and they're educated on them and they can find them wherever they need to. But I think another issue that happens here is that a lot of these students, when they know their rights, they go to the International Students Association to tell them. And I'd really like to strengthen that connection with their international students. And as much as they want to go to the International Students Association to tell them about their problems and what's going on, they also want to come to the Students' Union. And part of me doing that, I've outlined in my platform specific strategies. In particular, I talk about a summit and having SRAs involved there, but even looking at the capacity to expand it if it works really well, and welcoming other students to get involved and feel like they have a welcoming presence.
Moving on to the next question. What are your thoughts on need-based versus merit-based financial aid programs? Abner, you.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't realize. Sorry. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Right now, it's not something that I've really read up on very much. Don't have a very good understanding of needs-based and financial-based. Talking about different funds that students need. What I will say is, if it's, what I don't understand is really the effect that it's having on international students, how international students are disproportionately affected. So speaking on this topic, after leaving this forum, is going to be something that I'm going to be researching and looking up on, seeing how it's affecting international students and how I can make a change, and seeing how the VP academic within my portfolio can impact that. One thing I really want to stress is I don't have all the answers. I don't have answers to every question, but what I am committed to doing is making sure that I'm learning and I'm listening to what international students are worried about, and making sure that I'm addressing those concerns so I can show them that I really care about them and I want to help them when they're here at the university.
Awesome, thank you. For the next question, how do you plan to make international students well engaged in finding opportunities in research on campus?
Yeah, great question. So in my platform, I outline talking about expanding research opportunities. I think the first step is educating students. I think there's a discourse around research that it's only meant for a specific type of person, a specific type of student. At the beginning of my undergrad, I never thought I'd be doing research. And by the time I got to the end, I ended up doing research for my practicum and I ended up loving it. The whole idea behind this is that I really want to expose students to research through faculty undergraduate research festivals, making those resources available to them so they're able to find them, and working with the International Students Association to find what the different opportunities are on campus and bring those opportunities and develop some kind of system to show international students what's available so they can go and they can take advantage of those opportunities and be able to get involved in research. And the other part of that is we also have on campus a lot of student journals and whatnot, and many students may feel like there's not a place for them in research because a lot of students want to get published and they want to do this, and there's not a chance for that. But because we have these student-based journals, students have the opportunity to go and apply for these, make the process much shorter, and be able to put those kind of things on their resume.
So for the next question. ISA is not part of the Council on Faculty Associations. How do you plan on addressing this, as international students are almost all around the campus in various faculties?
Yeah, I agree. And there's very rarely an issue on campus that doesn't involve international students. Specifically talking about COFA, COFA is meant to be a place for faculty associations. I genuinely believe that it's a place where it should still be just faculty associations, being able to discuss the issues that they're facing and being able to address them in that space. However, we talk about the governance restructuring task force. That is a task force that Rowan mentioned that I'm sitting on currently. And part of what we're going to do on that task force is when we're doing our consultation, ensuring that there are spaces for international students to be able to voice their concerns, and we can hear them and we can make sure we implement them. And in doing this, I also talk about creating a summit for international students, other SRAs, Aboriginal Student Council, and faculty associations and campus associations to get together and hear those concerns. So my hope is that I can start to create spaces where international students are comfortable, where they can voice their concerns, they can bring their diverse perspectives to help address some of the problems we're facing. And then, moving forward, we can find more places within the Students' Union and within Student Council in order to hear student concerns and international student concerns.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. How do you plan to help international students who struggle to find placements in experiential learning opportunities?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I touched on this a little bit in my opening remarks, but I can expand on it. So what I was talking about was working with the Career Center to find more opportunities, develop a bank for students to find experiential learning opportunities. The first part of that is making those available. And I talk about in my platform, reaching out to First People's House, reaching out to the International Students Association to make those resources available to them so it's very easily accessible to find. And then I talk about, I can create as many opportunities as that could possibly be made for international students in order for them to be able to find those things. But at the end of the day, if it's a work experience opportunity and they need to have a permit to be able to do that, then they're not going to be able to even take advantage of the opportunities that I'm creating. So working with external stakeholders and working with the vice president external and the president to make sure that we are addressing these issues so that we're not just creating opportunities, because that's one thing. But if we're not giving people access to be able to actually utilize them, then there's no point in spending the time trying to create those opportunities for students.
Thank you. For the next question, from your position, how do you plan to collaborate with the ISA in the future to tackle international issues?
Yeah. So, I've had a few conversations with Chanpreet this year, and they've been very good discussions talking about the issues that international students are facing. That's the primary way I think that we're going to be able to address a lot of the concerns. And it's really just as simple as making sure that I'm making time taking time out of my day, even once a week, to make sure that I'm talking with Chanpreet, talking with the ISA's vice president academic, to make sure that I'm aware of the concerns, that the ISA is aware of the concerns the Students' Union has. We're very transparent. We're on the same page. We understand what the issues are, and we can work together to solve them. And it's not, we're just making assumptions of what we think students are going through. And then it comes to making a big decision, and then we're not on the same page, like what happened when we were working out the issues between the International Students Association becoming an SRA.
Thank you. You will now have 30 seconds to promote your campaign to the international students.
Perfect. Yes, I'd like to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity, the International Students Association, for having me here and to be able to talk to international students about the issues that they're having. What I want to stress is that in my platform, I really made a huge effort to make sure that it's inclusive to all students on campus, and that international students' voices are reflected in all the decisions I want to make, and that I'm being very collaborative in that process. I focus on improving academic supports, I focus on empowering the voices of students, and I focus on diverse learning opportunities. I think all of these are crucial to making a better experience for international students. Thanks.
Thank you. We will now move on to our next candidate from our VP External candidate, Christian. For your first question, tell us about one challenge that you think international students face when they come to U of A, and what will you do from your position to resolve it?
Thank you for the question, Safwan. I can't speak for all international students, but I can also just speak from my personal experiences and things I've been involved in. And in my first year of university, as well as last year of high school, my mother was an international student in the States for her master's program in social work. And seeing her go through that period was very rough, not only for a human being, but for her son, and the pressures and the worries and the stresses that she had to go through, and the constant visa applications. But not only that, the social barriers that she experienced. You would think that someone just coming from Canada into the States wouldn't have as hard of a time, but she did as well. And so there's a lot of mental and social barriers that I saw her experience, and I don't want to project that to all international students, but I certainly feel that could be a big issue. And in terms of how I could contribute to helping, that would be again to fund. Asking the federal government to create more transfers that deal with better improving our transition periods for international students.
For your next question, how are you planning to ensure reforms to the post-secondary system would not adversely impact international students?
Yes. Big changes are coming to our post-secondary institutions in Alberta. And one of the things I've set up for that is to hopefully, if elected, create a task force or working group with all stakeholders on campus, from student leaders to faculty association leaders, to have constant feedback from them. And that will include international student leaders, whether they be through ISA or in the wider campus community, and taking those feedback and advice and integrating it into my advocacy and into the minister's creation of a framework for Alberta's future post-secondary system.
Thank you. For your next question, would you like to speak more about the International Students Committee in the CASA initiative? Yes, I can. So what we've seen is that at the CASA level, they've created working groups, a committee towards Indigenous students and Indigenous students advocacy throughout Canada, and that's built the groundwork for improving CASA's advocacy priorities for Indigenous peoples. And I would also like to see the same thing done for international students right now, because CASA does have a working policy for international students, but in terms of like the strategy we have for going around and pushing ministers and pushing stakeholders throughout the country at all levels of government to improve international students' issues, that needs to be improved on more. So I will work with Chanpreet and the Vice President Externals, Gubani and Lucas, to improve our federal advocacy. Thank you. For your next questions, how can international students benefit from your plans for student employment?
Yes, so one aspect of in my platform for international students is to remove the requirement for study permit, but in tandem with that, it's also working to build the groundwork for bringing back the STEP program or temporary employment program, which was so beneficial for increasing work integrated learning opportunities for students, both domestic and international. So in doing that, I'm hoping that we can work with key stakeholders in the Edmonton community and Alberta community to convince them to see how this program was benefiting them and also benefiting students, and take that argument to the provincial government and saying, hey, this is something that works for you. If you want to talk about bringing back the economy, this is something that works for you, and including international students in that conversation.
Thank you. For the next question, what's your thought about the need-based versus merit-based financial aid programs? So need-based bursaries, merit-based scholarships.
I think it's always great to recognize people's academic and leadership achievements on campus and in their communities. But there's only so much that can be given. And so while we'll also work to improve our merit-based funding and awards, we also have to look to improving our need-based, because that's also very important. And especially when we see that the rates of tuition are increasing for international students and there's more barriers to achieving work, we need more supports. And like I mentioned in my opening speech, is looking into the endowment fund that the SU has to get the interest that's generated from that fund to possibly provide more need-based as well as merit-based scholarships and awards for international students.
Thank you so much. Now you will have 30 seconds to promote your campaign to the international students.
Yes, thank you. Like I said, there's so much work that's going into advocating for international students' issues, and on my platform, I'm going to continue to work with ISA and other international student leaders on our campus to make sure that our advocacy is strong, both at the federal, provincial, and in other areas of our campus community and Edmonton, Alberta, and Canadian community. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to our VP Student Life candidates. So the first question will be addressed to both our candidates. I will have Talia answer this first. Tell us about one challenge that you think international students face when they come to U of A, and what will you do from your position to resolve it?
Thank you for the question. So one of the biggest issues, and we all know this to be true, is that there is a lack of community building opportunities for international students. You know, we are often very segregated within, I think, our events. You know, there's events specifically for international students and then more towards domestic students. And so, like I mentioned within my speech, I really want to work to do two things when it comes to events. The first is hosting more cultural events, like, for example, Lunar New Year events, but also working towards hosting events that introduce people to this land, for example, so that they can build solidarity and also learn more about the land and Indigenous peoples here. And the reason why events are so important and building community is so important is because that is how we holistically solve issues surrounding mental health. Not completely, but that is a big part of it, right? If you feel constantly excluded, that's one of the big issues. And so we really got to work to address that. Thanks.
Thank you. Daniela, the same question, you will be answering the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, it's fine. So one of the biggest challenges international students face is that there's not enough support for international students and the orientations. At a larger scale, the only orientation available to international students is a paid one and is still not as comprehensive as international students need it to be. So I really think we need to create comprehensive and free orientations that work with student groups, because these are the groups that are already doing it. We need to work with the ISA to also do this. I think that's the biggest issue. The orientations are not comprehensive. They're not free. The students shouldn't have to pay more. Like, they're already paying so much. So I think that's the biggest issue. Like, they're just kind of thrown into the university life and they're just expected to adapt on their own.
Thank you. For the next question, the cost of an isolation accommodation program at the U of A is one of the highest in the U15 universities. How do you plan to address this issue? We will have Daniela answer this first.
So I already worked with the ISA, and the first step is to ensure that the SU is not, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Definitely. So the cost of an isolation accommodation program is one of the highest in the U15 universities. How do you plan to address this issue?
Yes. Yes, so it's important to ensure that the SU is not forgetting about this when they're addressing the external advocacy efforts. So I think it's would be important to work with the BP External to also see how other universities have lowered the cost, but how we can also internally lower the costs, and why they're so high at the U of A, because I mean, other universities are always going through budget cuts. So that shouldn't always be the excuse. And we need to make sure that we're also giving them the supports available during this isolation, whether that's through making sure that they have the mental health resources and the peer support, but really seeing how it can be decreased institutionally, and what the SU can do to advocate for this, and talk with like other universities and really make sure that we're getting to those low costs, because it is possible, like
Thank you.
others have done it. Yeah.
Talia, you will answer the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I'm good.
Awesome. You have 1 minute.
All right. So first of all, I think it's important to note that this is something I've already discussed with the ISA, and I've thought a lot about how we can actually tangibly change this to suit international students' needs. I think first of all, this is gross practice to just put it out there. Nobody should have to pay for this because it's about health. It's something that's totally outside of their control, and it's an additional barrier to coming back to school, and we don't want that to affect anybody in any way, particularly as most of our residents in status quo, not even during COVID times, are half empty, right? So there's no excuse for the university to be doing this. My plan to address it is to use tactics that we've seen this year in particular have been very effective at pushing the university, and that's using external and direct advocacy and direct action to put pressure on the university to basically shame them into changing their practice. And if that doesn't work, we need to find other alternative funding methods so that we as the SU can help to decrease the cost placed on international students. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, this question is very similar to one that the presidential candidate was asked. After the whole SU Students Council and ISA Council roll on the SRA, there is significant damage and distrust among the international students community and the SU relationship. How do you plan to improve this? I will have Talia answer first.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think that was something that it was a strange situation. You know, as I spoke about a council, I'm not entirely sure why communications got so hostile, because at the end of the day, I think myself and many other counselors from the get-go agreed that like the ISA needed to become an SRA, and there was no contention about that. I think it was about minute details and communication just not being the best between both groups on both sides. So I think that as you know, VPSL, I want to work with the relationship that I already have with members of the ISA to build on those relationships, have regular meetings to just have conversations about that, whether that's bi-weekly or monthly or situationally, whatever they think is best, so that we can try and improve just our conversational relationship and make sure that we have a really strong working relationship. So if there is ever tension, it doesn't escalate to where it was before in council. Thanks.
Thank you. Daniela, you will be answering the same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Awesome.
No, thank you. So it's important that we address that for a lot of advocacy efforts that the ASA has done in the past, the SU has taken credit for. We need to address this because international students have been doing a lot of the fighting, but then the SU has been the one that swept up and is the one that is getting the tap on the back. So we need to empower the ISA and be their support, not as the lead, because they are the ones that know the best for international students, and we need to make sure that we're advocating for them, but not like in front of them, if that makes sense. I have worked closely with the ISA. I've actually worked with them to create changes. It's been more than just talks. It's been more than just meetings for me. I know I'm friends with a lot of international students, because I truly understand their lived experiences, as I was one at one point. And that is why, as BPSL, it's so important that you have shared those lived experiences, because they will never truly be important unless you have lived them. Thank you.
For your next question, what's your view on the clean air strategy? Should vaping and tobacco products be banned or not? Janella, you will answer this first.
So I don't think this should be completely banned, because it leaves out a lot of populations that first, there's indigenous community. Even though that the smoking ban is allowed for ceremonial uses, it can still impact them, and we need to acknowledge that. But for the international student population, we need to also acknowledge that in certain cultures, smoking is more prevalent than in others. And we need to ensure that this is not discriminating against those populations, and also ensure that we're acknowledging that the smoking ban can negatively affect those students who are trying to quit, as going cold turkey can be quite stressful on the human body, and also can impact their mental health. So we need to ensure we're creating open spaces for these students that need to smoke, and not entirely banning it, to ensure that we're protecting those vulnerable groups.
Thank you. Talia?
Sorry, just give me a sec. So first of all, I think it's important to note that last year, when this came to council as a proposal, I was one of the most adamant voices against a ban, a total ban. And then again, when it came to GFC, I reached out to Aboriginal Students Council's president to see if there was anything I could do to help represent them on this matter. And then on Monday, I also spoke out against this. And the reason why is because bans don't actually solve anything. As I said at my statement at GFC, what we need is more comprehensive mental health supports that help people with addiction rather than criminalizing people. And the reason why this is so important is because it will be enforced by UAPs most likely. And usually it is BIPOC people who get disproportionately targeted by UAPs. And so I absolutely stand firm against a no smoking ban, and I will continue to do so because that's part of my job, and I don't want it to see it go through at all, particularly as many students don't agree with the complete ban. Thanks.
Thank you. For the next question, this year, international students were served frozen food on the Augustana campus over the winter break. How do you feel about this, and how would you address this so that this will never ever happen again? Talia, you will answer this one first.
Yeah, thank you for this question. And first of all, I think it's important to recognize that, I don't go to Augustana. And so I have done work with their food system and the managers of their food system, as I am chair of the sustainability committee. And we are trying to make sure that our work on the changing the food plan to be more accommodating to students includes all campuses. And so that's work that I'm being involved in, though it is early stages. I was very shocked to hear that this was happening to students who couldn't go home. Unfortunately, I had already gone to stay with my parents at this time, and so I couldn't be involved with any of the actions that were brought forth, as there was a pretty quick turnaround on it. But moving forward, I would like to do my work around the meal plan, as I want to implement new practices that have been used at other universities and used successfully to revolutionize the meal plan, not only at Augustana, but across campus, to meet dietary restrictions, as well as be more accommodating for students and affordable. Thanks.
Thank you. Daniela, you will be answering the same question.
Thank you. So I'm from Augustana, I am sure everyone knows, and this was actually something that I started. I have been advocating to all the executives at Augustana, all administrators, to the cafeteria. I actually worked in the cafeteria at Augustana for more than 2 years, so I know the issues. There are issues that the food staff can be very racist to international students. I've fought against that. The fact that the food that international students sometimes are fed is a lower quality than the general diets. So it's not okay, and that is why I spent like countless hours driving around, making sure that they're getting these like proper meals. I've also worked with international student services to ensure that they were getting the meals. And it's also important to acknowledge that the ISA was the one that helped me. I got very little help from the SU, and I understand a lot of people maybe went home or couldn't like help, but we need to acknowledge that this is why the ISA exists, because at times when this happens, the ISA has been the one at the front. Thank you.
So for the next question, what is your opinion on the orientation program at the U of A? Do you think it's able to address the international students' need, and how do you want to make it better? Daniela, you may go first.
I don't think that the orientation services are enough. Like I mentioned, the only established orientation service offered by the university is a paid one, and it's still not as comprehensive. I've heard from multiple international students, they feel like even though it existed and they had to pay for it, it was still not enough in their opinion. And there are multiple student groups who have been working on campus to offer orientations, and they have been seeking help from the SU for such a long time with these orientations that are culturally and religious sensitive. So we need to make sure that we're helping those student groups because those student groups know what's best for the specific groups of the international student community, because it's diverse and it is complex, and there needs to be different ones to ensure that the resources are also being part of the orientation catered to the specific cultural and religious needs. And I know many students have felt like they just had to completely find everything on their own, especially like at Augustana. You don't know where to get groceries, where to get things that are culturally and religiously sensitive to you, how to get transportation. There's a lot of things that students just have to learn.
Thank you. Talia?
Yeah, so as has been said many times, the orientation that we currently have at U of A does not suit international students' needs. So I think that we need to make our pre-existing orientation suit international students' needs by making sure that they are culturally inclusive, that they give them the information that they need, and that things are provided in different languages. Particularly Mandarin was, I know, very important for a lot of my friends in first year, and they needed more resources, but they weren't given them by the university. But I think going beyond just changing pre-existing programming or working with groups that are already doing this, we also need to work to make sure that we are creating a program especially for international students, and that it doesn't just target first years. I know a big issue is that we have WOW, but then if you're an older student or you've been here for a couple of years, we say, okay, you're good. You have a community here at U of A, that's fine. Obviously, that's not the same for international students. So as VPSL, I would like to work towards developing something that can take place during the winter semester, which is more targeted towards that. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the next question, you might have already spoken about this in your intro, but tell us one thing or a program that you specifically want to do for international students. Talia, you may go first.
All right, so there's a few things. First of all, I've spoken a lot about events. I know that events don't fix everything, but we do have an issue with community building here at U of A and with making international students feel like they're welcomed here. And that's been a failure of the SU so far, if we hear it every single year from international students, which is why I want to work to create more diverse events, as well as work to make pre-existing events welcoming to international students, as well as suit their needs. Beyond that, the more specific and big goal within my platform is to create culturally sensitive and inclusive mental health supports. Every year we say we're going to advocate for counseling and clinical services to do this, and simply no change gets made, which is why I've taken a different approach of making sure that the Peer Support Center does this. Beyond that, we also need to make sure that we are supporting survivors of sexual assault, and international students face an additional barrier, which is why I want to create resources as well as a guide that is translated into various languages so that everybody can get the support they need. Thanks.
Thank you. Daniela? Go ahead.
Like I mentioned many times now, students orientation for specifically international student orientation is something I'm very passionate about, because being someone who arrived here with minimal knowledge of where I was, or in general, like how the academic system worked, it's something that I know firsthand how difficult that adaptation can be. And to be expected to just do that on your own, or if you want to have any chance of adapting at a faster rate, you have to pay additional fees on top of the tens of thousands of dollars you're already paying. It's not right, and it's not right the university has not addressed this in the past. International students should not have to pay for this, and the orientations are not catering to the specific needs of international students. They need to be culturally and religious inclusive, and we need to work with student groups, because we can't forget that it's student groups, the specific cultural and religious student groups within the ISA that have been doing this work throughout the year.
To finish off the question period for our VP Student Life candidates, you will each have 30 seconds to promote your campaign to the international students. Daniela, you can go first.
Okay, you should vote for me because I have been fighting for you since I began university. I have been fighting to create tangible changes. I'm not here just making promises for the future. You can see my work in the past. You can ask the ISA. I have been more than promises. I have been more than statements or meetings. I want to truly fight for you like I have in the past. I have benefited hundreds of international students, and I want to amplify that to thousands. I truly care because I know your experiences, and it's time your voice is represented.
Thank you. Talia, go ahead.
As I stated in my opening statement, I am not an international student, and I recognize that that means that sometimes I'm not going to have the lived experience that you do, but that doesn't mean that I can't relate and empathize with the struggles that you have gone through. I have shown throughout my time as a student representative that I'm a fierce advocate for international students, and that's not going to change once I am your VPSL. I have created a platform that has tangible plans that are clearly laid out for what I will do for you as an international student. You can learn more at votefortalia.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now move on to our VP Operation and Finance candidates. For your first questions, once again, both of you will answer the same questions. This year, I apologize. Tell us about one challenge that you think international students face when they come to U of A, and what will you do from your position to resolve it? Emily, you may go first.
Thank you for the question. So it's very clear that international students face very unique challenges when they come to the U of A. Not to say that all international students' experiences are the same, but my parents were both international students. And so I watched them struggle to face the cultural difference, to face communication barriers, and they felt isolated. And so that is why I want to make sure that our services are available in multiple languages and that barrier is taken down. I also want to make sure that our services cater to and are specific to international students because they do deserve support. And lastly, I want to make sure that our relationships are built and that we're building relationships on campus. And that's why I am a strong advocate for a permanent subspace for international students.
Thank you. Julia, you may go ahead.
Thank you so much for the question. A lot of international students face very unique problems in comparison to domestic students. And I think one of the largest things that international students face is connectivity to the SU. Personally, I believe the ISA is doing an amazing job with engaging international students to be involved within student governance, and the SU really needs to substantially improve upon this and follow in the footsteps of the ISA. And I'm really empowered underrepresented groups to take more roles in student governance, with international students taking up 20% of the student body, and it really needs to be reflected within student leaders within the SU. And that's why my platform focuses on Stride. I really want to push this forward, this campaign school that works to encourage women and non-binary folks to pursue student governance. In addition, another thing the SU exec can really follow in the footsteps of the ISA with is through transparency on Instagram. Specifically, I'm referring to the ISA's monthly council and executive updates. And I really want to mimic this with the UASU executive page to really put forward bigger transparency between not only SU international students, but domestic students.
Thank you. So, Emily, you raised a very good point about, regarding creating a space for international students and the ISA. How do you plan on implementing this as the sub building is pretty packed on space?
Thank you for your question. That is a very important question. Before I put that on my platform, I did have conversations with the staff at the SU to make sure that this is something that I can do and not just an empty promise. And so after having conversations with the staff, I do believe that this is a very tangible thing that I can do. So I've been in conversation with them, and I'm sure that this is something that we can accomplish.
Thank you. Julia, what is your opinion on this? Currently, the international students don't have a hub, or neither do the ISA, we don't really have a permanent office space. So how would you address it?
Well, thank you so much for this question. Through my consultation, my multiple consultation with ISA, specifically Champreet, this problem has been brought up to me by him, and how important it is that the ISA and international students have a designated space, an office space for them to use. Although I do see, I guess, sub as being one of the buildings that we can accomplish this in. Having talked with Champreet, it's not, I guess, the most ideal way to put this room within sub because of constant tenants and moving in and out and these contracts. It's a very flexible space, and really international students really need a permanent space where they can always be, I guess, they can rely that the space is always going to be there for them. And that's why it'd be more, I guess, convenient if this space specifically was right next to international student services. And I would obviously help and consult with the ISA to try and push this advocacy to see what best space really suits for them and not just putting them in sub.
For the next question, this is addressed to both of you. There are over 400 plus student groups on campus, and with only around $60,000 of funding available for grants. In fact, this year the student group grant didn't even have a winter round for funding, and that's due to the funds draining out. So how do you plan on changing this? Julia, you may go first.
Thank you so much for this question. I think it's really super important. Throughout my consultation process, the student group grants was a really large aspect of what student groups, and also the ISA really came up to me, and one of the largest issues. And after speaking with managers, I've gotten to see, I guess, both sides of the coin in terms of this issue. And I really think there still needs to be more in terms of really helping and supporting student groups at this time, especially with how difficult, like you mentioned, there was no second round for the winter because many student groups are accounting for the SU for support. And that's why I really want to introduce a student group handbook and give these student groups the power to be able to not only rely on student groups and student group services and grants provided by the SU so they can keep afloat. I really want to empower themselves to look to other grants and external ways in which we can do this. Because obviously with amount 450 student groups and the financial struggles of the SU, we really need to make sure we're empowering these groups and not relying.
Emily?
Thank you. So this is something that I've touched on before, and I have said it in my platform as well. But it's crucial that this year, especially, that we optimize our businesses and services, because when we optimize our businesses and services, more profits can be put into student services, such as a student group grant and fund. And I have put in my platform a tangible plan about how I think we can optimize our businesses, so that student groups and student funds have the funds that they need to be supported and to continue building that community on campus, which I think is so important.
Thank you. So this year, you both know how international students were excluded from the UPass. The SU did help ISA in its advocacy. And together we were able to get international students included. But what do you see went wrong in the first place? And how do you plan on making sure that incidents like this doesn't happen again? Emily, go ahead.
I think that communication is really important. Communication is really important to see what are the issues and how they can be solved. So I think if more communication was brought towards the international students and the VP Ops Phi and all of the other people involved, I think this issue could have been fixed. And that's something I definitely want to strive for if elected, to continuously build community between the International Students Association and build the relationships between the ISA Council so that your issues are met and your concerns are heard.
Thank you. Julia?
Thank you so much for the question. Obviously, this year with the UPass, it was a super difficult process. And obviously, by the end of it, students ended up not being able to have access to UPass this year. And I really think Alana really did try her hardest with trying to get this UPass, and with the ISA feeling left out in the conversation, I think was one of the things that really we could improve on next year. I think in regards to anything with the ISA or with any issues that pertain to specific groups on campus, we need to really make sure that they're already in the conversation since the very beginning. This advocacy should have started with ISA right on the table, and the ISA didn't have to, I guess, reach out to ETS by themselves. They should have worked in tandem with one another in order to advocate for international students, especially with the UPass, and with all advocacy efforts in the future regarding international students.
Thank you. So the ISA is a fully self-funded, is currently fully self-funded with sponsorship and other resources, but in the future, the ISA might need additional funding to provide services to international students. What are your views on this, and how do you think you would be able to support ISA in this? Julia, you can go first.
Well, thank you so much for the question. I think it's really important with the SU really provides support to ISA international students, with them being taking up 20% of the student population. And like we mentioned, the 450 student groups on campus and just the pool that's already in student group grants is not enough. There needs to be more that the SU needs to do in terms of making sure all these student groups and all international students feel supported by the SU financially. Although the ISA currently is in a place where they can be financially stable, it's not always guaranteed. So the SU always needs to be there in order to provide them the support, whether it's through increasing the current pool grant that we have for student groups, or specifically, I guess, allocating parts of the student group grant specifically to BIPOC international students or underrepresented students on campus.
Thank you. Emily, go ahead.
Do you mind repeating the question, if that's okay?
For sure. So the ISA is currently fully self-funded with sponsorship and other resources. But in the future, ISA might need additional funding to provide services to international students. What are your views on this, and how do you think you would be able to support the ISA in it?
Thank you for the question. So I think it's important that the SU does support its student groups and does support the International Students Association. As I said before, and I keep saying, if our businesses win, our students win. You know, I don't think that revenue should ever come from student fees. So the only other way to do that is optimizing our businesses and our revenue so that funds can be allocated to student groups and funds can be allocated to the International Students Association and offer you support.
Thank you. To mark the end of the question period for our VP Operations and Finances, you will each have 30 seconds to promote your campaign to the international student. Emily, you can go first.
Thank you. International students deserve to be heard. They deserve to be well supported, and you deserve to be well represented on our campus. This is something that I want to strive for with my platform. You can find more information at emilykamani.com, and I hope to have your support March 3rd and 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia?
Hi, international students, I think, really take up a very unique part of campus, and they really need really good support from the SU. That's why my platform focuses on 3 main points: aim with accessibility, inclusivity, and maximization of operational capacity. You can learn more about my platform on joyveloso for bpof.com or on Instagram at joyveloso for bpof. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now invite our Board of Governors representative candidate, Dave. So first question for you is, tell us about one challenge that you think international students face when they come to U of A, and what will you do from your position to resolve it?
One big issue I've seen this year is the disrespect from teaching staff towards international students, right? Where we're like, even at last Monday's General Faculties Council meeting, Champreet cited a student that had to get up in the early hours of the morning in a 2-bedroom house with 7 other family members and had to take a live class to get participation marks in that situation. That's entirely unacceptable. It's shocking to see professors be that disconcerted with issues like this at student well-being. So in response to that, I'll keep working alongside other student reps at GFC to keep raising the issue and keep administration accountable in that context. I can also definitely personally follow up with the Vice President Academic, Steve Dew, as well as Bill Flanagan if issues continue going unaddressed. And both of these involve advocating with ISA on an ongoing basis, right? Consultation, talking about strategies, that kind of thing. And lastly, ensuring that the SU president's advocating at BLRSEC committee of the board.
Thank you. So the next question is actually a question that was seen over at the live platform. In your platform, you expressed that you plan to advocate for the international students' tuition by bringing the contribution of international students after graduation. However, the student wonders if this will be at all possible because with the lack of resources, this seems one of the least things of interest of the government. Will the bursaries you plan on implementing will also be available to international students, as international students are not eligible for financial aid?
I'm sorry, could you maybe rephrase or ask the question again?
Yeah, definitely. So once again, this question was taken from the live. In your platform, you expressed that you plan to advocate for international students' tuition by bringing the contribution of graduated international students. However, that student wonders if this will be at all possible because the lack of resources seems to be one of the least interest from the government. And so will the bursaries you plan on implementing will also be available to international students, as international students are not eligible for financial aid?
Absolutely, thank you, Safwan. I understand better. So a key distinction here. So I mentioned the government being unwilling to subsidize through the PSLA, and that's true. And for me, that's a longer term advocacy goal, where that tracking of graduated international students that contribute back to the Alberta economy is part of the case for advocating to the provincial government, not necessarily in my spot necessarily, but definitely at least building that data bank about why international students are worth the government's money, because they're giving back to the Albertan economy, because that's one of the government's kind of primary focuses. Is their investment in terms of donation getting a return in terms of students. Other things as well, I did mention external donors, and that's through the Office of Advancement, and that's just community partners. And then lastly, the UAlberta budget. I'm looking at the offset from the tuition increase for international students, and that's internal. That's not the government. So there's money there.
Thank you. So at multiple occasions, you have made really good points, but some believe the approach was not very firm. Would you like to address it, and what can we see differently if you get reelected?
The approach to what?
To solving certain issues and problems.
Sure. So just generally speaking, I'm always building cases where possible, right? Because anecdotal evidence and statistical evidence is a big part of what we do at the board. But another part of that, and we even saw this morning in our governance committee meeting, getting too heated or pushing in that way to turn board members off hurts relationships in terms of meeting one-on-one for advocacy, as well as it makes me appear as unapproachable and unwilling to compromise, which makes, when I bring a case to the board or I want something and compromise is an option, it becomes less of an option if I'm too aggressive in that sense. So the relational approach, I believe, is definitely a very critical part. It's also sometimes when we think about advocacy against something like tuition, where the government's raising money, and for the board, there's actually not very much to do in that case. My job is, instead of just harping on tuition, looking for other solutions. And that doesn't have to be an emotionally charged pursuit.
Thank you. So you had been working really, really well with the ISA this year, but as the international students representation on the BLR SEC couldn't go through last year, what are your next steps or further plans now for international students representation?
The argument about lots of internal stakeholders is pretty valid, in my opinion, and I think strengthening pre-existing communication pathways is a critical spot for now, and that's pushing through students union, right? Making sure ISA and students union have a healthy working relationship. I'm a voting member of Students Council, so I'll definitely speak into that the positive relationship there. But then as well, for me, my job is to directly voice international student concerns, and that's things like hearing from them, to then share at the Reputation and Public Affairs Committee when that committee asks for an environmental scan, which is an input from all the stakeholders I represent. It's doing topical consultation with them. It's emailing my biweekly reports to them, being available to chat with executives or members of council, just in personal context or whatever else about issues. So I think there are other meaningful pathways of communication.
Thank you. For your next question, how do you plan to change the mandatory fees the students are currently facing?
Absolutely. That's a conversation with the registrar's office that I'm going to have after the March 12th vote, because right now I'm busy with elections, but then after that point, I'll be working to address the budget vote, and then I'll look at mandatory fees. And so we're definitely looking at experiences, right? Are people benefiting from these fees? And if they're not, what needs to change? Either we lower the fee, or we make sure that the money being put into that fee that contributes to what registrar's office is called overhead, gets effectively put back into the student experience.
Thank you. For the next question, what's your thought about, on the need-based versus merit-based financial aid programs?
Absolutely. So just to give some context around our budget specifically, right, I mentioned students in crisis mode, and that was something Champ pressed to me, and I accept that and I prioritize that. So offset from tuition increases for international students are split into two camps. One camp being needs-based bursaries for students already existing on campus, and then the other part is scholarships. I'm not sure if they're split into students on campus as well as prospective students, but I know for sure they go to prospective students. Those prospective students are the university is trying to attract them with a high level of scholarship to increase enrollment, right? And so it is a difficult spot because there are pros and cons to both situations. But I do believe that if UAlberta doesn't care for its pre-existing community, I see that really damaging its reputation for incoming students. So in my opinion, I think we need to press needs-based bursaries, and that's something I'll push at the board. And following meetings, I'll have that conversation with Todd Gilchrist, who's the finance VP. Those are some pathways.
Awesome, thank you. How do you plan to advocate for the betterment of remote learning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I kind of talked about that when I discussed international student issue that they're facing right now. But that's keeping a close eye at General Faculty's Council, right? What's the outcome of the task force, and is the task force doing things that reflect the student need? I did talk about our previous forum about getting in touch with the Academic Staff Association and discussing kind of teaching standards and the culture that they perpetuate in their staff. Not to be accusing, because there is some sensitivity there, but instead to inquire and to hopefully encourage on the grounds of student experience and educational experience. Also, as I said here, if we don't see substantial action, I can definitely reach out with ISA, right? Collaborating in terms of planning the messaging, things like that, but reaching out to Stephen Dew, the provost, as well as Bill Flanagan, the president, and continuing to push that as well. I mentioned it earlier, Rowan Lee as president will be on a BLURSEC, which is the Student Experience Committee. And so I'll make sure that priorities push there.
Thank you. Now you will have 30 seconds to promote your campaign to the international students.
For sure. I'm valuable in this role because I've already spent a year here. I've worked in relationships with board members, senior administration. I'm familiar with the spaces. I know how kind of power flows. I've worked with Chanpreet, Gurbani, Dear Bid, Lucas, Marquise, so communication won't be a problem. And I'm committed to advocating for more bursaries for you international students, building a case for your value to Alberta so the government will respect you more by subsidizing your tuition through bursaries or other means. And as well, I care deeply about equitable remote learning, and I'll continue to fight for that.
All right, thank you so much. Well, this marks the end of the 2021 SU election forum hosted by the ISA. Thank you so much to all of the candidates. I wish you all good luck in the upcoming election, and hopefully we will be working together in the future. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys.